All right, my next two guests claim they were ousted by Speaker John Boehner from key committee posts in the House for their conservative views and votes against the party leadership. Now, the Speaker's office is in fact denying this was an act of retaliation, saying their conservatism has nothing to do with it and that the decision was based on, quote, a range of factors. And here to explain what exactly they think is going on and why, Kansas Congressman Tim Huelskamp is with us. And from Michigan, we have Congressman Justin Amash is here. All right. Congressman Huelskamp, let me start with you, because you were quoted as saying, in fact, you believe this was directly related to votes that you had given. You brought this up in conference yesterday. What were you told in conference?
We were ignored. I asked for a list of the votes by which they used to make this decision. Indeed, there was a list, a litmus test, and it wasn't provided yet. And I think many of my colleagues are outraged because the vote is sacred. I mean, we don't turn that over to anybody in Washington, and clearly I voted against the debt deal. I voted against a number of these budgets. I voted against these bills that didn't solve our spending problem, and that's where I've been most critical of where we've headed in Washington, but that's why I ran. My folks sent me up to change Washington before it changes me, and then now we get punished by being taken off committees that are very important to Kansas.
So you're basically saying that this is a result of your conservatism, and this is only happening. And I also read tonight that the Speaker said, hey, there might be more of this. We're going to be watching your votes closely. Was that said?
Yes, that was said, Sean, and I was very disappointed in that, and it was pretty clear that there may be more, and that's not the way to run the House. And frankly, usually voting against leadership was when they did things that were not conservative. I mean, we can disagree on strategy, disagree on tactics, but we can't disagree on the fact is we're spending too much money in Washington, we're borrowing too much money, we're about ready to jump over a fiscal cliff, we got this huge $16.3 trillion debt, and they're focused on a few people that have pointed out that problem.
Congressman Amash, what is your interpretation of all of this, and what do you say to the Speaker who is denying that, in fact, the votes have anything to do with this?
Well, thanks for having me on, Sean. And it's pretty clear there was a scorecard. They haven't denied that, but they continue to insist that wasn't the reason. It doesn't make any sense to me. If there was a scorecard, and we've heard there is, then show it to us. Let us see what the scorecard says. And I will bet that the reason they don't want to show it, I think it's pretty obvious, that if you were fiscally responsible, you were docked on that scorecard. You were actually marked down in the Republican conference for being fiscally responsible. And we were sent here to represent the American people. The vast majority of Americans want us to come here and work together to balance the budget.
Yeah. Congressman Huelskamp, I'm a conservative. I'm even registered conservative in New York. I'm not a registered Republican. And I believe that with the Tea Party in limited government, I think the argument ought not be about which revenues we're going to raise, but it ought to be about cutting spending in Washington. So as a conservative and the other conservatives in the country, what should they be thinking at this point in terms of are conservatives being punished in the House? Because if they are, I have a big problem with that.
Hey, Sean, here's what I think is going to happen. I think the effort's underway. We have had members of leadership talk about tax increases. Friday, I released a video. I meant it and reaffirmed my pledge not to raise taxes. Less than one business day later is when I received word I'd been removed from a committee. I think there's the effort, there's the desire to raise taxes in Washington, D.C., and I expect that of the President of the United States. I expect that of Harry Reid, but I expect Republicans will actually reaffirm their pledge and hold to the pledge that 238 of us said don't raise taxes. I fear that's where they're heading.
All right, but 16 Republican congressmen could hold up the speakership of Congressman Boehner. Is there a growing movement, Congressman Amash, in the Republican caucus?
Well, I think there's a lot of unrest right now, a lot of unease. The Speaker may have miscalculated here, thinking that it's just going to be a few of us who are concerned about it. But it's clear he made a threat to the rest of the conference, and people aren't taking that very well. And I've heard from people high up in the ranks who are saying, look, this is not the right way to run a conference. And so I think this is going to backfire on Speaker Boehner, and people who run a conference like this have to be very careful.
All right, gentlemen, both of you, thank you. We're going to continue to watch the story, and we're going to reach out to the leadership and see if they'll come on and answer some of the questions about this. And coming up,